I shouldn't have noticed it, not just the way my stepfather's eyes lingered on me for a moment, or the subtle softening of his tone when he said my name, but the overwhelming change that began that unforgettable New Year's Eve. I can still remember how ordinary the evening began, with Linda fiddling in the kitchen, humming her favorite tune as she prepared a sumptuous feast. The clinking of dishes and joyful laughter from the living room mingled with the aroma of cinnamon and roasted spices, creating an atmosphere of warmth and family togetherness. Every detail seemed perfectly ordinary until I saw him. Bradley, my stepfather, casually leaned against the doorway, cradling a glass of deep red wine in his hand. While everyone else admired the dazzling display of fireworks outside or gathered around the television to watch the festivities, his attention was fixated solely on me. "Chase," he said in a low, almost conspiratorial tone, beckoning me closer with a slight nod. There was something in his voice, something layered with hidden intent, that made my skin prickle. Unsure whether it was curiosity or a stubborn need to defy the unease churning inside me, I stepped hesitantly toward him. "What is it?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice even as a heavy silence settled between us. A slow, deliberate smile spread across his face, a smile that seemed both charming and unsettling. "I have an idea for a little game," he murmured, his words laced with promise. "A new family tradition," he added as if unveiling a secret plan meant to draw us all closer. At that precise moment, Linda emerged from behind the kitchen door, wiping her hands on a towel, her eyes lighting up with anticipation. "Bradley, you always come up with the best ideas," she said warmly, unaware of the dark undercurrents behind his proposal. The plan was deceptively simple. Each family member would write down a list of personal challenges or wishes for the coming month, a way to bond and share hidden hopes and desires. Bradley presented the idea with such enthusiasm that it seemed like nothing more than an innocent suggestion for a fun tradition. But when he handed me my neatly folded list, I felt a chill ripple down my spine. The paper, crisp and precise in its presentation, bore a line in immaculate handwriting that read, "Spend more time with me, alone." My heart skipped a beat as I glanced at him, trying desperately to read an expression that might betray his true intentions. Yet he was already absorbed in helping Linda set the table, his actions as natural as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. As the night progressed and everyone else busied themselves with the countdown to midnight, I retreated to my room, clutching the list like a forbidden secret. I sat in silence, the only sound the distant hum of conversation and laughter. I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the list was more than a mere suggestion. It was a directive, a command hidden in plain sight. My eyes lingered on the second item, even stranger than the first. "Tell me something about yourself that no one else knows." At first glance, it might have appeared as an invitation to share a secret, a harmless gesture meant to spark deeper connections. But as I pondered it further, a gnawing dread took hold of me. Something about this game felt inherently dangerous, as if it were designed to blur boundaries that should never be crossed. No sooner had these thoughts crossed my mind than my phone vibrated with a new message. The screen lit up with a terse note from an unknown number. "Your move, Chase. Don't disappoint me." My hands trembled as I read those words, each one echoing in the quiet of my room. I didn't have the courage to reply, so I simply lay back on my bed, my heart pounding in my ears. In that moment, I replayed the entire evening in my head, the lingering gaze of Bradley, his enigmatic smile, the barely perceptible brush of his fingers as he delivered that note. Every detail overwhelmed me, and yet, when morning came, he acted as though nothing had happened. Breakfast was a scene of feigned normalcy. Linda moved about the kitchen with her usual grace, and Bradley joined the family at the table, playing the role of the perfect husband and stepfather with practiced ease. To everyone, he was the picture of normality, an ideal figure of stability. But as soon as Linda left for her errands, leaving just Bradley and me together, his demeanor shifted. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Did you think about the list?" I froze, my throat tightening as I managed to whisper, "What list?" His smile broadened in a way that was both unnerving and intimate. "Good girl," he said softly, "let's keep this just between us." In that moment, a sinking realization washed over me. I was caught in a dangerous game, one in which I was expected to obey without question. The days that followed blurred into a haze of mixed signals and mounting tension. Bradley was omnipresent. He offered to help with my homework, sat a bit too close during family movie nights, and found countless excuses to let his hand graze my shoulder. Each touch, each lingering glance, sent shivers down my spine. It was as if he was gradually erasing the boundaries that I had long thought sacred. Despite my internal protests, I found myself caught in his orbit, unable to escape the unsettling magnetism of his attention. One Saturday, when Linda was out visiting a friend, I attempted to seclude myself in my room, hoping to avoid his pervasive presence. But fate was relentless. Soon enough, a soft knock echoed from my door. "Chase, may I come in?" Bradley asked gently. I hesitated, my pulse quickening as I saw him grip the edge of my desk with an unexpected tenderness. "Why? Just to talk?" I managed, though my voice quavered with apprehension. His calm, measured tone did little to dispel the foreboding that had settled over me, yet I reluctantly opened the door. There he stood, holding a steaming mug of hot chocolate. His face was an unreadable mask, concealing all emotion behind a veneer of calm. "I thought you might need this. It's chilly tonight," he murmured, offering me the mug. I accepted it with a mix of gratitude and trepidation, trying to ignore the lingering warmth of his touch that sent shivers along my arm. Inside the quiet of my room, Bradley's demeanor shifted again. His tone turned soothing as he inquired, "What are you doing?" My voice wavered as I stuttered, "I just wanted to check on you." "You seemed distant." Instead of replying, he leaned back against the wall, studying me as though I were a complex puzzle he was determined to solve. Lowering his voice even further, he confessed, "This game isn't merely about rules, it's about trust, and I want us to trust each other." The words sent a jolt through me. My pulse raced in my ears as I tried to process what he had just said. "I think you should go," he remarked with a smirk, the slow, deliberate curl of his lips sending another shiver down my spine. "Don't worry, Chase, you'll get the hang of it in time." That night, I lay in bed, unable to shake the memory of his words. Every phrase, every glance, every fleeting touch replayed in my mind as the walls of my room seemed to close in, trapping me in a vortex of fear and confusion. Then, just as sleep threatened to overtake me, my phone buzzed once again. This time, the message was not from an unknown number. It was from Brad himself. "Meet me in the living room at midnight. Don't be late." My hands trembled uncontrollably as I read the message. In that moment, I understood with a sinking dread that this was no longer a playful family game. It was a trap from which there was no easy escape. Despite every instinct screaming at me to run, an inexplicable pull urged me to comply. The note, signed simply Brad, detailed a series of wishes for the coming month. Some were benign, suggestions to watch a movie together or share a personal secret, yet one demand made my stomach twist with revulsion. "Stay with me alone tonight." I tried desperately to convince myself that it was merely a joke, that perhaps this was an innocent family tradition meant to include me. But every time I met his eyes, they burned with a disquieting, all-knowing intensity that left no room for doubt. That very evening, with trepidation coursing through my veins, I made a choice I would come to regret. I decided to complete one item from his list, watch a movie with him. The house was enveloped in silence. Linda had already retired for the night, exhausted from the day's errands. Bradley waited in the living room, the television casting a soft glow across the room, accompanied by an open bottle of wine resting on the coffee table. "I thought you might like this one," he said, patting the seat beside him with a gentle insistence. For a brief moment, I hesitated, caught between the allure of curiosity and the gnawing fear that churned within me. Ultimately, I sat down, positioning myself as far away from him as the couch would allow. At first, everything appeared normal. Bradley engaged in casual conversation, even commenting lightly on the plot of the movie. But as the minutes ticked by, I began to notice subtle shifts in his behavior. His arm gradually draped along the back of the couch. His tone softened as though he savored every syllable of our conversation, and then, almost imperceptibly, his hand brushed mine. The contact was so light, so fleeting, that I could have convinced myself it was accidental. Yet the sensation was anything but harmless. My heart pounded furiously, and every nerve in my body screamed for me to pull away. But I remained frozen, trapped by a terror that was both physical and psychological. "You're so tense, Chase," he murmured in a tone that was almost soothing. "I'm fine," I lied, withdrawing my hand into my lap while his unwavering eyes continued to bore into mine. "You're not accustomed to this kind of attention, are you?" he teased softly, as if the intimacy we shared was something entirely natural. "What are you talking about?" I managed to ask, struggling to maintain a steady voice. His smile, once charming, now resembled a carefully laid trap, one that promised more than just the sharing of secrets. "You're growing up, becoming a woman. It's natural for people to notice," he said, his voice dripping with an unsettling mixture of pride and menace. I longed to run, to retreat to the safety of my room and lock the door behind me, but I found myself immobilized by a force I could neither name nor resist. As the movie ended, I murmured that I should probably head to bed. Before I could gather my things, Bradley leaned slightly forward. "Wait, just one more thing," he said, his voice calm but expectant. "Remember the list? I want you to trust me. This game is about trust." I pulled my hand away, muttering a hasty goodnight, and retreated to my room. But that night, sleep eluded me. His words echoed relentlessly in my mind, twisting and turning until they lost all semblance of meaning. What kind of trust was he demanding? And why did the list, in all its pristine simplicity, continue to haunt me? I knew I should have torn it apart, thrown it away, but instead I found myself reading it over and over, each new line revealing even darker demands. The very next line read, "Tell me something you've never revealed to anyone." The following day, I tried desperately to act normal. Breakfast was a whirlwind of motion, Linda flitting about the kitchen with practiced ease, Bradley calmly reading the newspaper, and me doing my best to mask the turmoil that raged inside. Yet as soon as Linda left for work, the atmosphere in the house grew oppressively thick once again. Bradley's eyes never left me as he leaned against the counter. "What are you doing today?" he asked, his tone deceptively casual but laced with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "I have a lot of homework to catch up on," I stammered, hoping to divert his attention. His slow, deliberate smile returned, sending fresh chills down my spine as he tapped his temple in a way that suggested we shared a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. I had no choice but to retreat upstairs, my heart heavy with dread, and lock myself in my room. Hours passed in restless anxiety until my phone buzzed yet again. "Let's talk soon, Chase." My stomach churned with foreboding as I read the message, a message not from a mysterious number this time, but directly from Bradley. I sat on my bed, heart pounding, wondering how he had managed to keep tabs on me so completely and what his ultimate plan might be. My first instinct was to block him, to sever all connection, yet a perverse curiosity compelled me to see how far he would push this twisted game. That night, I remained in the dark confines of my room, the silence punctuated only by the creaks of the old house, each sound amplifying my dread. The following morning, a new note lay on my desk. "Hope you're not ignoring me." In the days that followed, the torment intensified. Stolen glances, whispered words in corridors, and lingering moments of unwanted intimacy became my constant reality. Bradley was always careful, never overtly aggressive, yet his every action was a reminder of his control. I felt the weight of his gaze, the subtle maneuvers he employed to corner me when I least expected it. A week later, while Linda was out once more, Bradley cornered me in the hallway. "You've been distant," he accused, his tone a curious blend of teasing and demand. "I've been busy," I replied feebly, trying to sidestep him. But he blocked my path, his smile simultaneously disarming and threatening. "I miss our talks, Chase." "I don't think we should stop," he insisted, his voice firm yet laced with an undercurrent of something far more sinister. "You're overthinking it, it's just us. No one else needs to know," he continued, each word striking me like a blow. Despite my terror, I felt an inexplicable bond tightening around me, ensnaring me further in the web he was weaving. Later that same evening, as the day faded into night, Linda unexpectedly returned home early. I was in the kitchen with our dog when her sharp gaze caught us in a moment that I wished I could erase. "Am I interrupting something?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with a note of suspicion that made my heart sink. Bradley quickly stepped in, his practiced smile in place as he reassured her that everything was perfectly fine. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," he said smoothly, claiming that Chase and I were simply starting dinner together. Yet the silence that followed was heavy with unspoken dread, a silence that promised complications I could hardly bear to imagine. That night, unable to endure the torment any longer, I summoned every ounce of courage and confronted Bradley in the quiet hallway. My heart hammered in my chest as I forced out, "I'm done, I'm not playing anymore." His reaction was not one of surprise. Instead, he offered a slow, knowing smile that sent a shiver of both fear and resignation down my spine. "This isn't just a game, Chase. You're already in deep, and you can't just walk away," he said, stepping closer with an air of bemused authority. "I can stop," I insisted, my voice trembling with both fear and defiance. "I'm finished, Bradley." He drew near, his presence overwhelming in its intensity. "Do you really think it's that simple? You crossed a line, you can't undo what's been done," he countered, his tone both amused and chillingly final. In the days that followed, I tried desperately to avoid him, retreating into the sanctuary of my room, ignoring the barrage of texts and notes that arrived with alarming regularity. Yet Bradley was relentless, his subtle reminders of control manifesting in every lingering touch, a casual brush of his hand, a pointed, almost predatory glance. Each encounter left me more isolated, more trapped within the confines of a life I no longer recognized. One stormy night, as rain pounded relentlessly against the windows and the power went out, plunging the house into darkness, I sat alone in my room trying to calm my racing thoughts. Suddenly, a knock on the door shattered the fragile silence. "Who is it?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the sound of the storm. Bradley's calm, steady voice responded, "It's me, Chase. We need to talk." I froze, terror and indecision mingling in every fiber of my being. "No, we don't need to talk," I pleaded, my voice trembling with a desperation that bordered on panic. Yet the door handle jiggled, and panic surged through me. There was a quiet knock on the door. "Chase, can we talk?" Bradley's voice came through softly. I hesitated, gripping the blanket tightly. "Not now," I managed, hoping he would leave. A moment of silence passed before I heard his footsteps retreating. I backed away from the door, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps as I struggled against the inevitable. After a long, agonizing pause, his footsteps retreated, leaving behind an uneasy silence that did nothing to dispel the lingering fear. The next morning, I discovered yet another note on my desk. "I knew you'd come around. We're not so different, Chase." His words lingered in my mind, leaving behind an uneasy feeling. I tried to tell myself that I was imagining things, that Bradley was merely testing boundaries and not truly dangerous. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. Later that night, when Linda was fast asleep, I overheard Bradley on the phone. His tone was low and serious as he spoke. "She's slipping. I'll handle it, but you need to stay out of it." I froze on the stairs, my blood running cold as I tried to comprehend the implications of his words. It became painfully clear that Bradley wasn't just playing a twisted game, he was orchestrating something far more dangerous, something that threatened to destroy every semblance of safety I had left. The tension in our home grew unbearable, every glance and every whispered word laden with the weight of unspoken threats. One evening, Bradley cornered me again, his voice deceptively calm as he asked, "Why are you avoiding me?" I lied, barely audible, "I'm not." "Yes, you are," he countered, stepping even closer, his presence suffocating. "Do you think you can outsmart me?" "Walk away," my voice shook as I declared, "I'm done playing your games." He leaned in, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that felt like a physical grip. "Oh, Chase," he said softly, almost pityingly, "this isn't a game, it's reality, and you're in deeper than you realize." The oppressive weight of his words made the walls feel as though they were closing in, each breath a struggle against the suffocating atmosphere. In the days that followed, I felt trapped in a relentless cycle of dread and manipulation. Every note that Bradley left, every lingering touch, and every whispered command was a reminder of the power he held over me. My life had transformed into a silent battleground where fear and despair waged war against even the smallest sparks of defiance. Then, one fateful evening when Linda unexpectedly returned home early, I reached a breaking point. With trembling hands and tears streaming down my face, I confided in her everything, the insidious notes, the relentless manipulation, and the way Bradley had cornered me in my own home. Linda's expression shifted dramatically, confusion melted into horror, and then hardened into a steely resolve. "We'll handle this," she whispered fiercely, pulling me into a tight embrace. "I promise you, Chase, you'll never be hurt by him again." The very next morning, Bradley was gone. Linda explained that he had left abruptly on a so-called business trip, though I suspected that his departure was merely a temporary reprieve. In the weeks that followed, Linda and I made the courageous decision to leave our old life behind. We moved to a new city, leaving not only the house and its painful memories, but also the man who had so devastatingly manipulated our lives. Linda, once gentle and open, became quieter, more guarded, yet emerged undeniably stronger. As for me, I struggled to rebuild my shattered life, even as the scars of betrayal and fear served as constant, painful reminders of what had been lost. Now, as I sit down to share my story, I do so not for pity but as a dire warning. If something feels inherently wrong, trust that instinct. Speak up and fight back. Never allow fear to silence you, for when you do, you risk surrendering control of everything you hold dear. And while the past may forever haunt me, I have learned that reclaiming my power is the only way to ensure that such darkness never takes root again. In the end, the journey to healing was long and arduous, but each step away from that oppressive past brought me closer to a future where trust is earned, and my voice is never silenced again. In the quiet hum of my new life, I slowly began to rebuild, piece by piece, the fragments of my shattered self. The city was unfamiliar yet full of promise, a stark contrast to the dark memories I once endured. I found solace in long walks along tree-lined streets and the gentle murmur of a nearby river, where the sound of water washing over stones reminded me that time, like the current, always moves forward. Every day, I challenged myself to face the echoes of the past and let them fade into the background. I enrolled in a creative writing class, using words as a shield and a mirror to understand my own feelings. There, among strangers with stories of their own, I learned that pain need not be carried alone. Slowly, I began forming genuine connections, finding strength in community and friendship. I attended local support groups where others, too, spoke of battles against unseen demons. With each conversation, I discovered that vulnerability could be a source of resilience rather than weakness. I spent many evenings journaling my thoughts, transforming haunting memories into narratives of hope and perseverance. The act of writing not only helped me process the past, but also allowed me to dream of a future unburdened by fear. One crisp autumn evening, while sitting in a small coffee shop with a warm cup of chamomile tea, I realized how far I had come. The oppressive weight that once stifled me had lessened, replaced by a cautious optimism. I had learned to trust my intuition again and to recognize the value of my own voice. Although the scars of betrayal still lingered like faint shadows, they no longer defined my every step. In that moment, I vowed to reclaim my power, to embrace both the pain and the healing, and to move forward with compassion for myself. The past remained a part of me, but it was no longer a chain. It had become a stepping stone on the path toward a brighter, more resilient tomorrow.